You think spiritual healing is a distant destination, but a Buddha taught it is a path you are already walking. When your soul begins to awaken, 20 subtle signs appear in your daily life. You feel less need to prove something. Small things bring unexpected gratitude, and silence stops frightening you. These signs do not arrive with fanfare, but with gentleness. You have carried pain for so long you forgot how to recognize your own healing. This video reveals the 20 signs that Buddhist monks observe in souls that are restoring themselves through mindfulness and compassion. Prepare to sleep while listening to this video. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. Have you ever noticed how tightly we hold on to things in life? That perfect vacation memory, a relationship status, even our youth, we grasp at these moments as if freezing time could somehow bring lasting happiness. Yet deep down, we all know that nothing stays the same forever, and this reality often brings us tremendous anxiety. This understanding of impermanence lies at the heart of Buddhist wisdom and offers a surprising path to freedom rather than fear. The ancient Pali word anicca refers to the Buddhist concept of impermanence, the understanding that everything in existence is in a constant state of flux. This isn't just a philosophical idea, but a practical observation about life that can radically transform how we experience our daily reality. When we start to truly integrate this understanding, we begin to notice subtle shifts in our emotional landscape. Many people first experience this healing when they stop fighting against changes they cannot control. Think about that moment when you finally accept that a relationship has ended, a job is no longer right for you, or a phase of life has passed. There's often a profound sense of relief that comes after the initial pain of resistance. This is the beginning of embracing impermanence rather than struggling against it. As this acceptance deepens, you might notice yourself holding experiences more lightly. A beautiful sunset becomes even more precious precisely because you know it won't last forever. Difficult emotions like sadness or anger lose some of their overwhelming power when you recognize they too will pass. Even physical pain takes on a different quality when observed through the lens of impermanence, arising, changing, and eventually subsiding. One of the clearest signs that your soul is healing through this understanding is when you catch yourself no longer clinging to positive experiences with the same desperate grip. Instead of frantically trying to capture every moment of a special occasion on your phone, you might find yourself simply being present, knowing that the true value lies in the experience itself, not in preserving it indefinitely. This shift extends to relationships as well. When we acknowledge that all relationships naturally evolve and change, we can love others more freely, rather than trying to freeze people in place or control how they show up in our lives. We can appreciate them as they are in the present moment. This doesn't mean caring less, quite the opposite. We care deeply, but without the suffocating quality that comes from resistance to change. Look at how you respond to unexpected changes in your plans or routines. Early in our spiritual journey, these disruptions often trigger frustration or anxiety. As we heal, we develop a more flexible relationship with life's unpredictability. The cancelled flight becomes an opportunity for an unexpected adventure rather than a disaster. The sudden change in circumstances reveals possibilities we couldn't have imagined in our carefully controlled plans. Many people report that embracing impermanence helps them let go of perfectionism. When we recognize that nothing remains the same, including our work, our homes, and our achievements, we can release the exhausting need to create something flawless and timeless. Instead, we engage wholeheartedly in the process while holding the results lightly. This acceptance doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. In fact, understanding impermanence often leads to more meaningful action because we stop postponing life until some imagined perfect future arrives. We recognize the preciousness of this moment precisely because it won't come again. Physical possessions take on a different meaning through this lens as well. While there's nothing wrong with enjoying beautiful or useful things, our attachment to them loosens. We might find ourselves naturally drawn towards simplicity, keeping only what serves the present rather than accumulating items for some imagined future need or holding on to things from a past that no longer exists. Perhaps one of the most profound healings comes in our relationship with mortality. In Western culture, we go to extraordinary lengths to avoid acknowledging the impermanence of our bodies and lives. Yet those who embrace this natural reality often report a deeper appreciation for each day and a remarkable freedom from trivial concerns. When we accept that our time is limited, we become much clearer about how we wish to spend it. You might notice this healing in how you talk about and process losses in your life. Rather than getting stuck in endless loops of grief, you find yourself able to honor what has passed while still moving forward. Memories become treasures to be appreciated rather than sources of pain about what can never be again. The acceptance of impermanence gradually transforms our experience of time itself. Instead of dividing life into good periods we wish would last forever and bad times we desperately want to escape, we develop a more integrated relationship with the natural rhythms of existence. We stop waiting for life to begin at some future point and stop lamenting that the best days are behind us. One practical way to notice this healing is in your stress levels during times of transition. Major life changes, moving homes, changing careers, children growing up naturally bring some emotional response. Yet as we embrace impermanence, these transitions become less traumatic and more like fascinating new chapters unfolding. Ultimately, the Buddhist wisdom of Anicca offers a paradoxical truth. By accepting that everything changes, we find a peace that doesn't change. When we stop resisting the natural flow of life, we discover a profound freedom that comes not from controlling our circumstances, but from transforming our relationship to them. This is the liberation that comes through embracing impermanence, not a resignation to change, but a celebration of life's dynamic, ever-flowing nature. Cultivating mindfulness in daily actions. Ever caught yourself driving home with absolutely no memory of the journey? Or perhaps you've finished an entire meal without tasting a single bite, your mind completely elsewhere. These autopilot moments happen to all of us, and they represent the opposite of mindfulness, a core practice in Buddhist tradition that has profound implications for healing and well-being. Mindfulness might sound like a complicated spiritual concept, but at its heart, it's remarkably simple. Paying attention to what's actually happening while it's happening. This quality of present moment awareness is something we all naturally possess, but in our busy, distraction-filled modern lives, it often gets buried under layers of planning, remembering, worrying, and daydreaming. One of the clearest signs that healing is taking place through Buddhist wisdom is when ordinary activities begin to transform from mindless chores into opportunities for presence. Take washing dishes. For instance, most people rush through this task, their minds already on what comes next. But as mindfulness develops, you might notice yourself actually feeling the warm water on your hands, observing the rainbow patterns in soap bubbles, or appreciating the simple satisfaction of transforming something dirty into something clean. This shift from doing to being while doing represents a profound healing of our relationship with time and activity. We spend so much of life rushing to get tasks finished, missing the actual moments that make up our existence. As the Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh famously said, when washing dishes, just wash the dishes, not to get them clean, but to wash dishes. This subtle but revolutionary perspective transforms even the most mundane activities into rich experiences. As mindfulness deepens, you'll likely notice changes in how you eat. Rather than absent-mindedly consuming food while scrolling through your phone or watching television, you might find yourself naturally slowing down, noticing flavors, textures, and the sensations of hunger and satisfaction. Many people report that this more attentive approach not only enhances enjoyment, but also helps them naturally eat appropriate amounts, as they're present enough to notice when they're actually full. Walking offers another everyday opportunity for mindfulness practice. Most of us treat walking simply as transportation, getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. But as healing through mindfulness occurs, even a walk to the mailbox can become a rich sensory experience. You might notice the pressure of your feet against the ground, the rhythm of your breathing, or the play of sunlight through leaves that you previously rushed past without seeing. One of the most significant benefits of growing mindfulness is the development of what psychologists call the space between stimulus and response. Without mindfulness, we tend to react habitually and automatically to triggers in our environment. Someone cuts us off in traffic, and before we know it, we're in a state of rage. With developing mindfulness, we begin to notice the trigger being cut off and can observe our reaction arising, the anger, before automatically acting on it. This space, even if just a few seconds, gives us the freedom to choose our response rather than being controlled by conditioned reactions. You might notice this healing in conversations, where instead of formulating your next point while the other person is still speaking, you find yourself truly listening. This quality of attention dramatically transforms relationships, as people sense the difference between being truly heard and merely tolerated until it's your turn to speak again. Time itself seems to transform through mindfulness practice. While objectively the hours and minutes remain the same, subjectively we experience time differently when we're fully present. Have you noticed how a 5-minute mindless scroll through social media can feel like it disappeared in seconds, while 5 minutes of full attention to a beautiful sunset can feel rich and expansive? As mindfulness develops, more of your moments take on this quality of fullness rather than slipping by unnoticed. Physical awareness also deepens through mindfulness practice. Many people live largely disconnected from their bodies, noticing physical sensations only when they become problems. Hunger becomes unbearable, or a slight discomfort develops into serious pain. As mindfulness healing progresses, you may find yourself naturally checking in with your body throughout the day, noticing subtle signs of tension, thirst, or fatigue before they become problematic. This growing body awareness becomes a kind of early warning system for self-care. The development of mindfulness often begins with formal meditation practice, setting aside specific time to train attention. But the real transformation happens when mindfulness extends beyond the meditation cushion into everyday life. You might catch yourself fully experiencing a hot shower, really tasting your morning coffee, or actually seeing the vibrant colours of a garden you pass every day but never truly noticed. For many people, this growing mindfulness heals a particular kind of suffering that comes from constantly being mentally elsewhere. We miss so much of our lives by projecting into the future or ruminating about the past. The mind keeps telling us that happiness lies in some other moment. When I get the promotion, or once the kids are in school. Yet when those events arrive, we're already focused on the next thing. Mindfulness breaks this cycle by revealing that life only ever happens in the present moment. Technology often pulls us away from mindfulness, so noticing your relationship with devices can reveal healing progress. Perhaps you find yourself naturally taking breaks from screens to look out the window or stretch your body. Maybe you catch yourself putting your phone away during conversations or meals, not because you're forcing yourself to follow a rule, but because you genuinely value the richness of unmediated experience. As mindfulness develops, even waiting in line at the grocery store, at a red light, for a meeting to start, transforms from frustrating dead time into an opportunity to simply be, rather than immediately pulling out your phone at the slightest pause in activity. You might find yourself content to observe your surroundings, feel your breathing, or simply rest in awareness. This quality of restful alertness, being fully present without straining or forcing, represents one of the most healing aspects of mindfulness. In our culture of constant doing and achieving, simply being can feel revolutionary. Yet this capacity to be present without agenda offers a profound rest that many of us desperately need. The beauty of mindfulness as a path to healing is that it requires no special circumstances, no retreat center, no perfect meditation space, no hours of free time. It simply asks us to show up for the life we already have, moment by moment, with curious attention. And in that simple but profound shift from mindless doing to mindful being, we discover that much of what we've been searching for has been available all along, waiting patiently for us to notice. The journey toward mindful living opens doors to other transformative aspects of Buddhist wisdom. As we become more present in our everyday experiences, we naturally begin to notice something interesting about how we relate to the future, specifically, period. How attached we become to particular outcomes, and how this attachment often creates suffering in our lives. Think about the last time you had your heart set on a specific result, perhaps landing a particular job, having a special event unfold exactly as planned, or expecting someone to respond to you in a certain way. When we grip tightly to these precise expectations, we set ourselves up for disappointment and frustration when reality inevitably takes its own course. This attachment to outcomes is one of the primary sources of suffering that Buddhist wisdom addresses. You might begin to notice healing in this area when you catch yourself becoming less fixated on controlling exactly how situations unfold. This doesn't happen overnight, of course. It's a gradual shift where you start to recognize that your inner peace doesn't actually depend on getting exactly what you want. Instead, it comes from developing the flexibility to work with whatever arises. Consider how you respond when plans change unexpectedly. Earlier in your journey, a cancelled flight, a rained-out event, or a project taking an unexpected direction might have triggered intense frustration or anxiety. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself adapting more easily, perhaps even discovering unexpected opportunities or insights in the revised circumstances. This release of attachment often shows up first in smaller daily situations. Maybe you don't get as upset when traffic makes you late, when a store is out of an item you wanted, or when your technology doesn't work as expected. These minor inconveniences become just that, minor, rather than major sources of distress. What's happening is that your sense of well-being is becoming less contingent on external circumstances aligning with your preferences. The healing becomes even more evident in how you approach your goals and aspirations. There's an interesting paradox here. Releasing attachment to outcomes doesn't mean abandoning goals or becoming passive. In fact, many people find they take more effective action when they're not emotionally desperate for a specific result. You might notice yourself working diligently toward an objective while simultaneously holding the outcome lightly, knowing that many factors beyond your control will influence what ultimately happens. This shift can dramatically transform your experience of both success and disappointment. When things work out as hoped, there's genuine appreciation without the frantic grasping that comes from believing this specific outcome was absolutely essential to your happiness. When things don't work out as planned, there's disappointment without devastation, as you recognize that your well-being isn't actually dependent on this particular result. Relationships often show the most profound healing in this area. When we're attached to others being exactly as we want them to be, we create conditions that make authentic connection impossible. As attachment loosens, you might notice yourself allowing others to be as they are without constantly trying to shape them to meet your expectations or needs. This doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. Healthy boundaries remain important, but it does mean releasing the exhausting effort to control how others think, feel, or behave. You might observe this healing in how you respond when someone disagrees with you or makes choices you wouldn't make, rather than feeling threatened or compelled to change their mind. You can acknowledge differences while maintaining connection. This gives relationships room to breathe and develop organically rather than being constrained by rigid expectations. Even your relationship with your own growth process benefits from this release of attachment. Many people approach spiritual or personal development with specific outcomes in mind, becoming more patient, less anxious, more productive. While these intentions are valuable, attachment to these particular results can paradoxically hinder progress. You might notice healing when you approach practices like meditation or self-reflection with genuine curiosity about what will emerge rather than a fixed agenda for specific changes. Decision-making often becomes easier as attachment to outcomes diminishes. When we're not fixated on controlling exactly how things turn out, we can make choices based on our values and the information currently available, then adjust as circumstances evolve. This flexibility creates a more responsive and authentic approach to life's complexities. The Buddhist concept of non-attachment doesn't mean not caring. This is a common misunderstanding. Rather, it means caring deeply while recognizing that we cannot control all the variables that influence outcomes. There's a profound freedom in this recognition. When your happiness isn't contingent on specific external conditions, you discover a well-being that's more stable and less vulnerable to life's inevitable fluctuations. You might notice this healing in your emotional responses to both positive and negative news. Instead of extreme highs when things go your way, or devastating lows when they don't, there's a more balanced engagement with life's natural ups and downs. This doesn't mean emotional flatness. You still experience joy and sadness, but these emotions no longer completely define your sense of well-being. Even your approach to major life goals shifts with this healing. Whether it's career aspirations, relationship hopes, or personal achievements, you may find yourself focusing more on the quality of your engagement and less on specific end results. This present-centered approach actually tends to create better outcomes, as you're fully invested in the process rather than distracted by anxious projections about the future. The healing journey around attachment also transforms how we relate to uncertainty. Our minds often crave certainty as a form of security, leading us to create elaborate plans and expectations. As attachment loosens, you might notice yourself becoming more comfortable with not knowing exactly how things will unfold. This comfort with uncertainty isn't resignation, but a recognition of reality. The future always contains elements we cannot predict or control. This release of attachment to outcomes ultimately creates a profound freedom. When your well-being isn't dependent on specific external conditions, you discover an inner stability that remains accessible regardless of circumstances. This doesn't mean never experiencing disappointment or never having preferences. It means those preferences no longer have the power to determine your fundamental sense of peace. As we loosen our grip on specific outcomes and develop more flexibility in how we relate to life's unfolding, we naturally create space for another essential aspect of Buddhist wisdom to emerge: compassion. This quality of heart, directed both toward ourselves and others, represents one of the most healing forces available to us. Compassion might sound simple, just being kind, right? But true compassion, as understood in Buddhist tradition, goes much deeper than conventional niceness or politeness. It involves a genuine response to suffering, our own and others, with the wish to alleviate it, combined with the wisdom to recognize what actually helps versus what might unintentionally cause more harm. One of the clearest signs that healing is occurring through Buddhist wisdom is a noticeable shift in how you relate to yourself during difficult times. Think about how you typically respond when you make a mistake, fail at something important, or notice an uncomfortable feeling or thought arising. Many of us have internalized harsh inner critics that attack with remarkable viciousness in these moments. How could you be so stupid? You always mess things up. No one will ever respect you if they knew the real you. As self-compassion develops, you might notice these harsh judgments arising, but also an emerging capacity to respond differently. Perhaps you begin to speak to yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend in a similar situation. This is really hard right now. Making mistakes is part of being human. What do I need in this moment to care for myself through this difficulty? This shift doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't mean never experiencing self-criticism again. Rather, you develop a growing awareness of your inner dialogue and the ability to intervene with kindness rather than being carried away by habitual patterns of self-judgment. Many people report that they first notice this change in relatively minor situations, spilling something, forgetting an item, or making a small error before it extends to more significant challenges. The development of self-compassion often coincides with a growing recognition of our shared humanity. When we struggle, fail, or face difficulties, we often feel uniquely flawed or isolated in our experience. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself connecting your personal challenges to the universal human experience. Everyone makes mistakes. All humans face loss and disappointment. Feeling afraid in uncertain situations is part of our shared biology, not a personal weakness. This recognition of common humanity doesn't minimize your specific experience, but places it within a larger context that reduces shame and isolation. There's something profoundly healing about recognizing that your struggles don't separate you from others, but connect you to the larger human experience. As self-compassion develops, you may notice changes in how you care for yourself during difficult times. Rather than pushing through discomfort or using distraction to avoid facing challenges, you might find yourself naturally taking breaks when needed, seeking support when appropriate, or engaging in small acts of self-kindness. This isn't self-indulgence, but a wise recognition that treating yourself with care creates the conditions for genuine healing and growth. The development of compassion naturally extends outward to your relationships with others. You might notice yourself responding differently to difficult people or challenging interactions, rather than immediately reacting with judgment or hostility when someone behaves poorly. You may find yourself wondering what might be causing their behavior. I wonder what they're struggling with. What might be happening in their life that I don't see? This curiosity about the underlying causes of behavior doesn't mean excusing harmful actions or remaining in unhealthy situations. In fact, true compassion often involves setting clearer boundaries than before. The difference is that these boundaries come from a place of care rather than punishment or retaliation. You protect yourself and others not out of anger, but from an understanding of what creates genuine well-being. You might notice this healing in how you respond to news about others' suffering, whether people you know personally or strangers affected by distant events, rather than turning away because it feels too overwhelming or becoming lost in helpless despair. Compassion enables a balanced concern that acknowledges pain while looking for appropriate ways to respond. This might be through direct action, supportive words, financial contribution, or simply holding others in your awareness with care. The growth of compassion often transforms everyday interactions in subtle but significant ways. You might find yourself making eye contact with the cashier at the grocery store, expressing genuine appreciation to service workers, or paying attention to the tone of your voice when speaking with family members. These small moments of connection and kindness create ripples of positive impact far beyond what we might imagine. One particularly powerful sign of healing through compassion is a growing ability to stay present with others during their difficult times without immediately trying to fix their problems or cheer them up. Our discomfort with others' suffering often leads us to offer quick solutions, silver linings, or changes of subject. As compassion deepens, you may notice yourself developing the capacity to simply be with someone in pain, offering your presence and attention rather than premature reassurance. This compassionate presence creates space for genuine healing connection. People don't always need our advice or solutions. Often they primarily need to feel that their experience matters and is being received with care. The ability to offer this kind of attentive presence is a profound gift. both to others and ultimately to ourselves, as we create communities of mutual support. As we cultivate compassion for ourselves and others, another quality naturally begins to emerge in our lives: equanimity. This Buddhist concept might sound unfamiliar, but it addresses something we all deeply long for: emotional balance and stability regardless of external circumstances. Equanimity isn't about becoming emotionless or indifferent. Rather, it's about developing a steadiness of mind that allows us to remain present and responsive amid life's inevitable ups and downs without being thrown off center. Think about the last time something relatively minor completely derailed your day. Perhaps a critical comment from a colleague, an unexpected bill, or a technology failure at the worst possible moment. Our default reaction is often to become completely absorbed in these challenges, allowing them to define our entire emotional state. As equanimity develops, you might notice that while you still feel appropriate responses to difficulties, these emotions no longer completely overwhelm or define you. One clear sign that healing is occurring through this aspect of Buddhist wisdom is when you begin recovering more quickly from setbacks. Situations that previously might have disrupted your peace of mind for days or weeks now might cause temporary distress, followed by a relatively rapid return to balance. This doesn't mean bypassing genuine emotions or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It means you develop the capacity to feel fully while maintaining a broader perspective that keeps difficult experiences in proportion. You might notice this growing equanimity in how you relate to both pleasant and unpleasant experiences. Without equanimity, we tend to grasp desperately at enjoyable moments, trying to make them last forever, while pushing away uncomfortable feelings, hoping they'll never return. As equanimity develops, there's a growing acceptance that all experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, naturally arise and pass away. This balanced awareness allows us to appreciate good times fully without clinging and to face challenges without excessive resistance. Daily frustrations often provide the first evidence of growing equanimity. Maybe you find yourself responding with unexpected calm when stuck in traffic, when technology fails, or when plans need to be changed at the last minute. These everyday annoyances become opportunities to practice rather than sources of significant suffering. The small stuff simply doesn't throw you off balance the way it once did. This growing emotional stability doesn't mean you never feel upset or that you suppress authentic feelings. In fact, equanimity often allows for a wider range of emotional experience because you're no longer afraid of being completely overwhelmed. You can feel sadness, disappointment, or frustration while maintaining an underlying sense of steadiness, like experiencing strong waves on the surface while knowing there's stillness in the depths. You might notice equanimity developing in how you respond to other people's moods and behaviors. Without this quality, we easily become emotional sponges, absorbing and reacting to the energies around us. As equanimity strengthens, you can remain present with someone who is angry, anxious, or upset without automatically taking on those same emotional states. This allows you to respond skillfully rather than react habitually. The development of equanimity particularly shows in how you handle major life transitions and challenges, job changes, relocations, relationship shifts, health issues. These significant life events naturally bring strong emotions. With growing equanimity, you can acknowledge the reality of these feelings while maintaining access to your inner resources and wisdom. Rather than being completely defined by a challenging circumstance, you recognize it as a temporary condition you're moving through. This balanced perspective doesn't mean minimizing genuine difficulties or maintaining toxic positivity that denies real problems. Instead, equanimity allows you to see challenges clearly without the distorting lenses of catastrophizing, "This is the worst thing ever," or denial, "Everything is fine." You can acknowledge that something is truly difficult while also recognizing your capacity to work with it skillfully. Many people report that developing equanimity transforms their relationship with strong emotions like anger, fear, or grief. Rather than being completely identified with these powerful feelings, I am angry. There's a subtle but significant shift to recognizing anger is present right now. This small space between yourself and the emotion makes all the difference, allowing you to feel fully without being completely overtaken. Physical sensations often provide a gateway to developing equanimity. You might notice yourself becoming more capable of staying present with uncomfortable bodily experiences, minor pains, itches, or temperature discomfort, without immediately needing to change them. This capacity to be with discomfort without immediate reactivity builds a foundation that extends to emotional and psychological challenges as well. Time takes on a different quality as equanimity develops. When we're caught in reactivity, time often seems to contract. Minutes of intense anxiety can feel like hours, or days of rumination about a problem can pass in a blur of obsessive thinking. With growing equanimity, there's more spaciousness in your experience of time. You can face challenges directly while still maintaining awareness of the broader context of your life. Decision-making improves substantially with developing equanimity. When we're emotionally reactive, our choices are often driven by immediate desires to escape discomfort or grasp at relief. With a more balanced mind, you can consider options more clearly, taking into account both immediate circumstances and longer-term impacts. You become less likely to make impulsive decisions you'll later regret. Perhaps one of the most valuable aspects of equanimity is how it helps us navigate uncertainty. Much of our emotional reactivity comes from the mind's desperate attempts to create certainty in inherently uncertain situations. As equanimity develops, you might notice greater comfort with not knowing exactly how things will unfold. This isn't resigned passivity, but a wise recognition that life contains elements beyond our control. The equanimity that comes through Buddhist practice isn't a static achievement, but a quality that continues to deepen throughout life. Even those who have practiced for decades encounter situations that challenge their balance. The difference is that with continued practice, the capacity to return to center strengthens, and the recognition of how reactivity creates suffering becomes clearer. What makes equanimity possible is a fundamental shift in how we relate to experience itself. Rather than dividing life into categories of things I want and things I don't want, we develop the capacity to meet whatever arises with a balanced awareness that recognizes the impermanent nature of all conditions. This doesn't mean we never have preferences. We naturally enjoy pleasant experiences and prefer to avoid painful ones. The difference is that these preferences no longer have the power to completely determine our state of mind. As equanimity strengthens, we discover a remarkable freedom, the freedom to respond to life based on wisdom and care rather than automatic reactivity. This responsive flexibility creates the conditions for another profound aspect of Buddhist wisdom to emerge in our experience: the recognition of interconnectedness. Have you ever had a moment when you suddenly felt deeply connected to everything around you? Perhaps while walking in nature, during a meaningful conversation with a friend, or even in a crowded public space where you briefly sensed the shared humanity of all the strangers surrounding you. These glimpses of interconnection offer a taste of what Buddhist teachings point to as our fundamental reality, that separation is largely an illusion, and everything exists in a vast web of mutual dependence and relationship. One of the clearest signs that healing is occurring through this aspect of Buddhist wisdom is when you begin experiencing yourself less as an isolated entity and more as part of a living, dynamic whole. This isn't just an intellectual understanding, but a felt sense that emerges through practice and awareness. You might notice this shift first in your relationship with the natural world, perhaps feeling a genuine sense of kinship with trees, animals, or natural landscapes, rather than seeing them as separate things outside yourself. This growing recognition of interconnectedness often transforms how we understand our actions and their effects. In our usual state of perceived separation, We might think that what we do affects only ourselves or perhaps a small circle of people directly connected to us. As awareness of interconnection deepens, you begin noticing how your choices create ripples far beyond what you initially perceive. The way you speak to someone influences not just that person, but everyone they interact with afterward. The products you purchase affect workers, communities, and ecosystems you may never see. This widening circle of awareness doesn't create paralyzing guilt or overwhelming responsibility. Instead, it brings a natural sense of care and consideration to choices that previously might have seemed inconsequential. You begin asking different questions. How does this action affect not just me, but others and our shared environment? What wider impacts might this decision have that I'm not immediately seeing? Relationships often show the most dramatic healing through this understanding of interconnection. When we operate from a mindset of separation, relationships easily become transactional. What can I get from this person? How are they meeting my needs? As interconnection is recognized, relationships transform into opportunities for mutual growth and support. You might notice yourself genuinely celebrating others' successes without comparison or envy, recognizing that their well-being and yours are not separate concerns. This shift extends to how we experience conflict as well. From the perspective of separate self against separate other, conflicts easily become win-lose battles where someone must be defeated. Through the lens of interconnection, conflicts transform into shared problems to be solved collaboratively, with awareness that harm to any party ultimately affects the whole. This doesn't mean avoiding necessary confrontation, but approaching it with a fundamentally different mindset. Many people report that recognizing interconnection helps heal the painful sense of isolation that often accompanies modern life. Despite our hyper-connected digital world, or perhaps partly because of it, many people experience profound loneliness and a sense of not truly belonging anywhere. As awareness of interconnection grows, this existential loneliness begins to dissolve, not because external circumstances necessarily change, but because we recognize our inherent membership in the community of life. This healing extends to how we relate to strangers and those different from ourselves. When operating from a stance of separation, those who look, think, or live differently can easily seem threatening or irrelevant to our concerns. Through the lens of interconnection, diversity becomes recognized as essential to the richness and resilience of the whole. You might notice yourself becoming more curious about perspectives different from your own, recognizing that no single viewpoint captures the full truth of our complex reality. Even our relationship with difficult people transforms through this understanding. Rather than seeing challenging individuals as obstacles to be avoided or enemies to be defeated, we begin recognizing how their behaviors arise from the same web of causes and conditions that shape us all. This doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, but approaching even difficult interactions with an awareness of our fundamental connection and shared humanity. The recognition of interconnection often shows up in subtle shifts in language and thought patterns. You might notice yourself using we more often than I, or considering communal impacts rather than just personal benefits when making choices. These small linguistic shifts reflect a deeper transformation in how you understand yourself in relation to everything else. Many people report that this growing sense of interconnection brings unexpected joy and meaning to their lives. When we operate from a stance of separation, happiness is often pursued through individual achievement, possession, or personal experience. As interconnection is recognized, joy emerges naturally from participation in something larger than ourselves, whether through contribution to community, care for the environment, or simply the felt sense of belonging to the living world. This healing through interconnection extends to how we relate to the Earth itself. Environmental concerns shift from abstract issues or distant political matters to immediate personal concerns when we recognize that the health of the planet is inseparable from our own well-being. This doesn't necessarily mean dramatic lifestyle changes all at once, but a growing awareness that influences choices and priorities over time. Physical experiences of interconnection can be particularly powerful. You might notice moments when the boundary between yourself and your surroundings temporarily softens, perhaps while swimming in a lake, walking in a forest, or sitting quietly in meditation. These aren't mystical events, but natural recognitions of a reality that's always present but often overlooked in our habitually dualistic perception. Even our understanding of helping others transforms through this lens. Rather than seeing service as something I do for them, there's a growing recognition that supporting others benefits the entire interconnected system that includes ourselves. This shift doesn't diminish genuine altruism, but places it within a more complete understanding that transcends the usual helper-helped division. The Buddhist teaching on interconnection, often called dependent origination or interdependence, isn't just a nice philosophical idea, but a practical description of how reality functions. As this understanding deepens, you might find yourself naturally living in greater harmony with the principles that govern our shared existence, creating benefits that extend far beyond your individual life. As we recognize our fundamental interconnectedness with all of life, we naturally begin to look more closely at the nature of suffering, both our own and that of others. The Buddha's teachings are often misunderstood as being pessimistic because they place such emphasis on suffering, dukkha. In reality, Buddhist wisdom offers an incredibly practical approach to transforming our relationship with difficult experiences, providing tools that can significantly reduce unnecessary suffering in our lives. The Buddha famously began his teachings with the Four Noble Truths, the first of which acknowledges that suffering exists as part of human experience. This straightforward recognition might not seem revolutionary, but it represents a profound departure from our typical approach. Most of us spend considerable energy trying to avoid, deny, or escape from discomfort rather than turning toward it with curious awareness. Yet this avoidance often creates additional layers of suffering beyond the original difficulty. You might notice signs of healing in this area when you begin responding differently to challenging experiences. Instead of immediately trying to distract yourself, fix the situation, or escape the discomfort, you develop the capacity to simply be present with what's difficult. This doesn't mean passive resignation, but a courageous willingness to look directly at what's happening without adding unnecessary resistance. Consider the difference between unavoidable pain and optional suffering. When we injure ourselves physically, some pain naturally arises. That's primary pain, a direct response to actual conditions. But notice how quickly the mind often adds layers of additional suffering. This always happens to me. I'll never be able to do the activities I love again. Why did I have to be so careless? These mental additions transform momentary pain into extended suffering through stories, judgments, and projections about the future. As healing progresses, you might catch yourself making this distinction in real time. Yes, there's pain here, and I don't need to pretend otherwise. And I'm also noticing how my thoughts about this pain are creating additional suffering. This awareness itself creates space that allows you to respond more skillfully to the original difficulty without the added burden of mental resistance. This transformative understanding applies not just to physical pain, but to all difficult experiences. Consider emotional challenges like anxiety, sadness, or frustration. When these feelings arise, our habitual response is often to judge ourselves for having them, to try forcing them away, or to become completely identified with the emotion. Through Buddhist practice, you begin recognizing that you can acknowledge the emotion's presence without these additional reactions that amplify suffering. You might notice this healing in how you talk about difficult experiences. Rather than statements that collapse you into the experience, "I am anxious," you might find yourself naturally using language that creates helpful space. I'm noticing anxiety is present right now. This subtle shift represents a profound change in your relationship to challenging emotions, recognizing them as temporary conditions rather than defining identities. This understanding of suffering transforms how we approach physical discomfort as well. Many of us live in fear of bodily sensations that signal something might be wrong, creating patterns of avoidance that actually increase sensitivity to pain. As healing progresses, you might find yourself more willing to feel sensations directly without immediately categorizing them as problems to be solved. This doesn't mean ignoring genuine medical concerns, but developing a more balanced relationship with the body's signals. One particularly powerful aspect of this transformation involves recognizing the role of resistance in creating suffering. When something difficult happens, we often respond with thoughts like, "This shouldn't be happening," or "I can't bear this." This mental resistance creates tremendous tension beyond whatever challenge we're actually facing. As healing occurs, you might notice yourself more readily acknowledging this is happening, even with experiences you don't particularly like or want. This acceptance isn't resignation, but a clear seeing that allows for more effective response. The healing extends to how we relate to others' suffering as well. Without this understanding, we often react to others' pain with avoidance, minimizing "it's not that bad," or rushed attempts to fix the situation. As our own relationship with suffering transforms, we develop greater capacity to simply be present with others during difficult times without these habitual reactions. This presence itself is often more helpful than any advice or solutions we might offer. You might notice this healing in how you respond to challenging news or circumstances, rather than immediately seeking distraction or numbing through substances, entertainment, or busyness. You develop the capacity to feel the impact fully while maintaining awareness that all experiences, including difficult ones, naturally change over time. This doesn't eliminate the pain of loss or disappointment, but reduces the additional suffering created by resistance. Many people report that transforming their understanding of suffering leads to unexpected freedom. When we're no longer organizing our lives primarily around avoiding discomfort, whole new possibilities open up. You might find yourself trying new experiences, having difficult but necessary conversations, or pursuing meaningful goals even when the path includes challenges. The willingness to be with difficulty without being overwhelmed by it creates remarkable resilience. This aspect of healing also transforms how we interpret difficult experiences. Rather than automatically seeing challenges as punishment, personal failure, or evidence that something is wrong with your life, you begin recognizing that difficulty is simply part of the human experience. This doesn't mean adopting a fatalistic view, but developing a more balanced perspective that neither catastrophizes nor denies the reality of suffering. Even our relationship with uncertainty, a major source of anxiety for many people, shifts through this understanding. Much suffering comes from the mind's desperate attempts to create certainty in inherently uncertain situations. As healing progresses, you might notice greater capacity to acknowledge "I don't know what will happen" without adding catastrophic projections or worst-case scenarios. This honest relationship with uncertainty actually creates more internal stability than false certainty ever could. The Buddhist understanding of suffering ultimately reveals something surprising, that our attempts to avoid discomfort often create more suffering than the original difficulty itself. As this recognition deepens, you naturally begin letting go of strategies that may have seemed helpful but actually intensified your suffering. This doesn't happen all at once, but gradually, as you experience firsthand the freedom that comes from relating differently to life's inevitable challenges. This transformation in our relationship with suffering naturally opens the door to cultivating positive mental states. Buddhist practice doesn't focus only on understanding difficult experiences, but also on actively developing qualities like loving kindness that create the conditions for genuine well-being. One of the most powerful practices for cultivating these positive qualities is loving kindness meditation. known in the Pali language as metta. Loving kindness might sound like a vague or sentimental concept, but in Buddhist tradition, it refers to a specific quality of mind, a sincere wish for well-being and happiness that can be systematically developed through practice. Unlike romantic love or personal affection, metta doesn't depend on another person's qualities or behavior. It's a generous attitude of goodwill that can extend to all beings, including ourselves, loved ones, neutral persons, difficult people, and eventually all living things. You might notice the first signs of healing through this practice in your relationship with yourself. Many of us maintain harsh internal dialogues filled with self-criticism, judgment, and impossible standards. As loving-kindness practice develops, you might catch moments when this harsh voice is replaced by a gentler, more supportive attitude. Perhaps you make a mistake and, instead of the usual self-attack, you notice thoughts like, "This is difficult. May I be kind to myself right now?" This self-directed kindness isn't self-indulgence or lowering standards. In fact, research suggests that self-compassion actually supports greater motivation and resilience than self-criticism. As this quality develops, you might find yourself making healthier choices, not from rigid discipline, but from genuine care for your own well-being. The tone of your self-improvement efforts shifts from punitive to supportive. The traditional loving-kindness practice involves silently repeating phrases like, "May I be safe," "May I be healthy," "May I be happy," "May I live with ease." These aren't magical incantations, but tools for focusing and directing our attention toward the intention of well-being. Initially, these phrases might feel mechanical or artificial. As the practice deepens, you might notice genuine feelings of warmth and care arising more spontaneously both during formal meditation and in daily life. Many people report that loving-kindness practice gradually extends its benefits beyond meditation sessions. You might notice spontaneous moments of goodwill toward strangers, genuinely wishing well for the person serving your coffee, passing you on the street, or driving in the car next to you. These small moments of connection and care can significantly change your experience of moving through the world, reducing the sense of separation that contributes to loneliness and alienation. The practice traditionally involves extending loving kindness in widening circles, from yourself to loved ones, neutral persons, difficult people, and eventually all beings. As healing progresses, you might notice changes in how you relate to each of these categories. Perhaps you find it easier to appreciate people you previously overlooked, or you develop greater understanding for those you find challenging. The rigid boundaries between those we care about and those we don't begin to soften. Particularly powerful shifts often occur in how we relate to difficult people. Without practices like loving kindness, we easily fall into patterns of resentment, avoidance, or hostility toward those who challenge us. As metta develops, you might find yourself genuinely wishing for the well-being of people you struggle with, recognizing that their harmful behaviors often come from their own suffering. This doesn't mean approving of harmful actions or maintaining unhealthy relationships, but it does transform the emotional charge these difficulties carry. Many people notice that loving-kindness practice helps balance the negativity bias of the human mind. Our brains naturally give more weight and attention to negative experiences as a survival mechanism. While this helped our ancestors avoid dangers, it can create a distorted view of reality in modern life. Regular loving-kindness practice helps counteract this bias, making positive experiences and connections more noticeable and memorable. The benefits extend to how we engage with wider social and global challenges as well. Without practices like loving kindness, exposure to large-scale suffering can lead either to overwhelm and shutdown or to anger and polarization. As metta develops, you might find yourself responding to difficult news with a more balanced concern, genuinely caring about suffering while maintaining the emotional stability needed for effective response rather than burnout. Physical effects often accompany the development of loving kindness. Many practitioners report sensations of warmth in the chest, relaxation in the face, or an overall sense of opening and softening in the body during practice. These physical changes reflect real neurological and physiological shifts that research has begun to document, including reduced stress hormones and increased activity in brain regions associated with positive emotions and empathy. Perhaps most significantly, loving kindness practice gradually shifts our baseline emotional state. Rather than requiring special circumstances to feel good, you might notice a growing background sense of well-being and connection that's less dependent on external conditions. This doesn't mean never experiencing difficult emotions, but these emotions arise within a wider context of basic goodwill that makes them less overwhelming or defining. This practice also transforms how we understand happiness itself. Our cultural narratives often suggest that happiness comes primarily through achievement, acquisition, or special experiences. Loving kindness reveals a different source of well-being, the heart's natural capacity for connection and care. As this recognition deepens, you might find yourself naturally prioritizing relationships and contribution over consumption and achievement, not from obligation, but from direct experience of what truly nourishes well-being. The development of loving kindness creates a positive cycle that supports all other aspects of Buddhist practice. As the heart opens, mindfulness becomes easier to maintain, compassion flows more naturally, and wisdom deepens through clearer seeing. This integration of heart and mind represents one of the most healing aspects of Buddhist wisdom, countering the artificial separation between thinking and feeling that characterizes much of modern culture. While developing loving kindness in our hearts creates profound changes, Buddhist practice also offers practical guidance for navigating daily life with greater balance and wisdom. Central to this guidance is the concept of the middle way, a balanced approach that avoids extremes and creates sustainable well-being. This principle isn't just an abstract philosophical idea, but a practical framework for making everyday choices in our complex modern lives. The middle way has deep historical roots in Buddhism. When Siddhartha Gautama, who later became the Buddha, was seeking enlightenment, he first tried extreme asceticism, starving himself, enduring harsh physical conditions, and denying basic needs. After years of this approach nearly killed him without bringing the wisdom he sought, he remembered a moment from his childhood when he'd experienced a natural state of meditation while sitting under a tree. This memory led him to abandon extreme self-denial and instead find a balanced approach that neither indulged sensory desires nor rejected the body's basic needs. This middle path ultimately led to his awakening. You might notice healing in your life when you begin finding balance in areas that previously tipped toward extremes. Many of us oscillate between periods of overwork and burnout, followed by collapse and recovery, only to return to the same unsustainable patterns. As middle way wisdom develops, you might find yourself creating more sustainable rhythms, working diligently but also ensuring regular rest, stepping back before reaching complete exhaustion. This balanced approach extends to how we relate to physical well-being. Our culture tends to promote either indulgent consumption without regard for consequences or rigid restriction driven by appearance ideals rather than health. The middle way offers a different approach, eating nourishing food with enjoyment, moving your body in ways that feel good and build strength, resting when needed, without turning any of these into rigid rules or occasions for self-judgment. Technology presents one of the most challenging areas for finding balance in modern life. Most of us have experienced both the benefits and downsides of our digital tools. Rather than swinging between complete immersion in screens and frustrated attempts to disconnect entirely, healing through the middle way might show up as more conscious boundaries, perhaps having certain times or places that remain tech-free, while fully utilizing helpful technologies without guilt during appropriate times. Relationships offer another area where the middle way brings healing. Without this balanced understanding, many of us swing between unhealthy attachment, where our well-being becomes completely dependent on another person, and cold detachment, where we protect ourselves by avoiding genuine connection. As healing progresses, You might notice yourself developing secure relationships that include both deep caring and healthy autonomy, loving others without trying to control them or make them responsible for your happiness. The middle way particularly helps with our approach to pleasure and enjoyment. Many spiritual traditions have promoted the rejection of pleasure as somehow impure or distracting, while consumer culture encourages constant pursuit of the next exciting experience. Buddhist wisdom offers a balanced alternative, enjoying pleasant experiences fully when they naturally arise, without building your life around chasing them or becoming dependent on specific pleasures for your sense of well-being. Even our approach to spiritual practice benefits from this balanced understanding. Without the middle way, we easily fall into extremes, either pushing ourselves with rigid discipline that creates tension and eventually leads to abandoning practice altogether, or approaching practice so casually that it lacks the consistency needed for real transformation. Healing might look like finding sustainable practice rhythms that can be maintained over years rather than days or weeks. You might notice this healing in how you approach self-improvement generally. Many of us fluctuate between ambitious self-improvement projects that eventually collapse under their own weight and periods of giving up on growth altogether. The middle way encourages steady, sustainable steps that honor both your aspirations and your current capacities, creating genuine progress without burnout. This balanced approach extends to how we engage with emotions, rather than either suppressing feelings or becoming completely identified with them. The middle way offers the possibility of feeling fully while maintaining enough awareness to respond skillfully. You might notice yourself becoming more capable of experiencing strong emotions without being overwhelmed by them, while also not disconnecting from your genuine feelings. Material possessions and consumption represent another area where the middle way brings particular wisdom. Our culture promotes accumulation far beyond actual needs or even capacity for enjoyment, while some spiritual approaches suggest that any enjoyment of material comforts represents attachment. As healing through the middle way progresses, you might find yourself naturally drawn to sufficiency, having what brings genuine use and joy while not being burdened by excess or defined by possessions. The middle way particularly helps navigate the tension between accepting yourself as you are and continuing to grow. Without this balanced understanding, we often either get stuck in complacent satisfaction with the status quo or become driven by harsh self-criticism that actually impedes real development. Healing might look like genuinely accepting yourself at your current stage of growth while still engaging in practices that support continued development. Time management represents one of the most challenging areas for finding balance in modern life. Many of us feel constantly rushed, with competing demands leaving little space for rest or reflection. As middle way wisdom develops, you might find yourself becoming more skillful at discerning what truly matters, saying no to excessive commitments, while still engaging actively with the responsibilities that align with your deepest values. Even our approach to health challenges benefits from this balanced understanding. When faced with illness or injury, it's easy to swing between obsessive focus on symptoms or treatment and denial or neglect of real needs. The middle way encourages appropriate care without allowing health concerns to completely dominate life, maintaining broader perspective even during difficult physical challenges. Perhaps most importantly, the middle way helps us navigate the inherent tensions of being human in a complex world without expecting perfect resolution of all contradictions. Rather than seeking absolute answers or perfect solutions, this balanced approach acknowledges the both and nature of many of life's challenges. You can be both ambitious and content, both engaged with the world and internally at peace, both accepting reality and working to improve conditions. The healing that comes through embracing the middle way isn't about finding the perfect balance point for each aspect of life and then rigidly maintaining it. Rather, it's about developing the awareness and flexibility to continually adjust as conditions change, moving between different needs and priorities with wisdom rather than reactivity. This dynamic balance creates sustainable well-being that can weather life's inevitable changes rather than collapsing under pressure. As we develop this balanced approach to life, we naturally begin noticing another aspect of healing through Buddhist wisdom, the cultivation of non-judgment and acceptance. Our minds constantly evaluate everything we encounter. I like this. I don't like that. This is good. That's bad. This is right. That's wrong. While some discernment is necessary for navigating life, these habitual judgments often create unnecessary suffering and limit our perception of reality. Think about how much mental energy you spend judging various aspects of your experience throughout a typical day. You might judge the weather, traffic conditions, your appearance, others' behaviors, your own thoughts and feelings, the quality of your work, and countless other things. Each of these judgments creates a particular feeling tone and often leads to additional thoughts that further remove you from direct experience of what's actually happening. One of the clearest signs that healing is occurring through Buddhist practice is when you begin catching yourself in the act of judging and can choose to shift to simple awareness instead. This doesn't mean never having preferences or discernment about what's helpful versus harmful. Rather, it means releasing the extra layer of evaluation that creates resistance to reality as it is. You might notice this healing first in relatively neutral situations. Perhaps you're walking outside and it starts raining. The judging mind immediately reacts with, "This is terrible. Now my plans are ruined." As non-judgmental awareness develops, you might still notice a preference for dry weather, but without the additional story and emotional reactivity. There's simply the direct experience: rain falling, body getting wet, plans needing adjustment. This non-judgmental awareness particularly transforms how we relate to our internal experiences. Most of us have certain thoughts and feelings we judge as acceptable and others we consider unacceptable or problematic. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself becoming more capable of acknowledging all your thoughts and emotions without immediately categorizing them as good or bad. This creates space to respond wisely rather than react based on automatic judgments. Many people report that developing non-judgment significantly reduces their anxiety levels. Much of anxiety comes from evaluating normal experiences as problems that need immediate fixing. When you can simply notice, heart beating faster, thoughts racing, stomach tense, without adding the judgment, "This is terrible. I shouldn't feel this way." The experience itself often becomes more manageable. This doesn't mean ignoring genuine dangers, but reducing the suffering created by unnecessary evaluation. This non-judgmental awareness extends to how we perceive others as well. Our minds automatically categorize people based on appearance, behavior, social categories, and how their actions affect us personally. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself becoming more able to see beyond these surface judgments to the shared humanity beneath. This doesn't mean approving of harmful behavior, but recognizing that all people are responding to conditions and seeking fulfillment according to their current understanding. You might notice this healing in how you respond to people who hold different views or make different life choices than you do. Without non-judgmental awareness, differences easily trigger feelings of superiority or defensive reactions. As this quality develops, you can acknowledge different perspectives without the immediate need to evaluate them as right or wrong, allowing for more genuine curiosity and potential understanding across differences. This acceptance doesn't mean passive resignation to harmful conditions that could be changed. In fact, true acceptance of what is actually happening in the present moment often leads to more effective action rather than less. When we stop expending energy fighting reality, this shouldn't be happening. We have more resources available to respond skillfully to what is actually happening. Many people find that cultivating non-judgment creates more space for curiosity and learning. When we immediately categorize experiences as good or bad, like or dislike, we often stop exploring them further. As judgments loosen, You might find yourself naturally more interested in examining experiences that previously triggered immediate reactions. This curious awareness itself often leads to insights that judgmental thinking would have prevented. Self-judgment represents one of the most painful and persistent forms of evaluation for many people. We often maintain internal standards that are either impossibly high or inconsistently applied, leaving us in a constant state of falling short in our own eyes. As non-judgmental awareness develops, you might notice yourself acknowledging mistakes or limitations without the additional layer of harsh self-criticism. "I forgot to respond to that email" becomes a simple observation rather than evidence of personal failure. This doesn't mean abandoning discernment about your actions. In fact, many people find they make better choices when not clouded by self-judgment, as they can see more clearly what actually helps versus what causes harm, without the distorting lens of proving their worth or avoiding shame. Physical experiences particularly benefit from non-judgmental awareness. Our bodies naturally include a wide range of sensations, some pleasant, some unpleasant, many neutral. Without this accepting awareness, we tend to either fixate on discomfort or completely ignore bodily experiences until they demand attention through pain or illness. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself becoming more capable of simply feeling sensations as they are, without immediately labeling them as problems to be solved or distractions to be ignored. The practice of non-judgment also transforms how we relate to challenging situations beyond our control. When faced with difficult circumstances, whether personal setbacks, relationship challenges, or larger social issues, our immediate reaction is often to resist reality, thinking, "This should not be happening." This resistance creates tremendous tension beyond whatever challenge we're actually facing. Acceptance means acknowledging this is happening as the necessary first step before determining how to respond effectively. Perhaps most significantly, developing non-judgment helps us see reality more clearly. When we're constantly filtering experience through evaluations of good/bad, right/wrong, like/dislike, we miss much of what's actually happening. As this quality develops, you might notice yourself perceiving more details, nuances, and aspects of experience that were previously obscured by your judgments. This clearer seeing itself becomes a source of both wisdom and appreciation for the richness of life beyond our limited categories. As we cultivate non-judgment and acceptance, we naturally begin to discover something that's been present all along, but often goes unnoticed in our busy lives: inner silence. This silent awareness exists beneath the constant stream of thoughts, plans, memories, and evaluations that typically dominate our conscious experience. Through meditation and mindfulness practice, we gradually become more familiar with this dimension of our consciousness. And this recognition brings profound healing to our often overactive and stressed minds. Have you ever noticed just how noisy your mind really is? Most of us experience a nearly constant internal monologue, analysing, planning, remembering, worrying, commenting on everything that happens. This mental chatter isn't necessarily problematic in itself, but when we're completely identified with this stream of thinking, we miss the deeper dimension of awareness that lies beneath. It's like being so focused on individual waves that we fail to notice the vast ocean they're part of. One clear sign that healing is occurring through Buddhist practice is when you begin to identify less with your thoughts and more with the awareness that witnesses them. This shift doesn't happen all at once, but gradually, often beginning with brief moments during meditation when you notice a gap between thoughts. These small spaces might last just a fraction of a second at first, but they offer a taste of the spacious awareness that exists beyond thinking. Many people report that these gaps between thoughts bring a remarkable sense of relief and refreshment, like finally setting down a heavy backpack you didn't even realize you were carrying. There's a quality of rest in these moments that's different from sleep or relaxation activities. It's the mind resting in its natural state of clear, open awareness without constantly generating content. As practice deepens, you might notice these moments of inner silence appearing not just during formal meditation, but spontaneously throughout your day. Perhaps while walking outdoors, during a pause in conversation, or even in the midst of routine activities, you suddenly become aware of a spaciousness behind or beneath your thinking. This recognition often brings a sense of perspective and peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances. The discovery of inner silence transforms how we relate to challenging situations and emotions. Without access to this deeper dimension, we're easily overwhelmed by difficult feelings or stressful circumstances, with no place of refuge. As awareness of inner silence develops, you might find yourself naturally shifting from complete identification with turbulent thoughts and emotions to resting in the spacious awareness that holds these experiences without being defined by them. This inner silence becomes particularly valuable during times of stress or difficulty. When facing challenging emotions, conflicts with others, or demanding situations, the habitual response is often more thinking, analysing what went wrong, generating solutions, or mentally rehearsing conversations. While some of this thinking may be useful, it often creates additional tension rather than clarity. The ability to access moments of inner silence provides a restorative pause that actually enhances effective action rather than impeding it. Many people find that their relationship with meditation practice itself changes as they begin experiencing the refreshment that comes from inner silence. What might have started as a chore or another self-improvement project gradually becomes recognized as essential nourishment for well-being. Rather than forcing yourself to meditate because you should, you might find yourself naturally drawn to practice because you directly experience its benefits. This shift often shows up in how you talk about and think about meditation. Instead of, "I need to meditate to become calmer or more focused," the orientation might shift to, "I'm giving myself the gift of connecting with this inner spaciousness that's always available." This change in perspective makes practice more sustainable over time, as it comes from genuine appreciation rather than obligation. Physical signs often accompany the discovery of inner silence. You might notice your breathing naturally slowing and deepening, shoulders relaxing away from ears, facial muscles softening, or an overall sense of the body settling when you connect with this quiet awareness. These physical changes reflect the intimate connection between mental states and bodily experience as the mind quiets. The body naturally follows. Many people report that developing familiarity with inner silence helps them sleep better. The racing thoughts that often prevent falling asleep or cause middle-of-the-night wakefulness become less compelling when you've developed the capacity to rest in awareness rather than being completely identified with thinking. This doesn't mean forcibly stopping thoughts, which rarely works, but shifting attention to the silent awareness in which thoughts arise. The healing potential of inner silence extends to how we communicate with others as well. Without access to this dimension, conversations easily become exchanges of reactivity, each person triggering and being triggered by the other without space for genuine listening or connection. As awareness of inner silence develops, you might notice yourself naturally pausing more in conversations, listening with greater presence, and responding from clarity rather than reactivity. This inner silence also transforms our relationship with sensory input. In our stimulation-saturated culture, many people feel overwhelmed by constant noise, images, and information. The discovery of inner silence doesn't mean withdrawing from sensory experience, but developing a different relationship with it, experiencing sights, sounds, and sensations from a place of spacious awareness rather than constant evaluation and reaction. Many people worry that cultivating inner silence might diminish their creativity or intellectual abilities. In practice, most find the opposite to be true. When the mind isn't constantly occupied with repetitive thinking patterns, there's actually more space for fresh insights, creative connections, and clear perception to arise. Some of our best ideas often come during moments of mental quietude rather than effortful thinking. Perhaps most significantly, discovering inner silence helps us recognize that peace isn't something we need to create or achieve, but a fundamental quality of awareness that's already present when we stop obscuring it with constant mental activity. This recognition brings a profound sense of relief. We don't need to struggle to reach some distant state of calm, but simply notice what's already here beneath the surface noise of thinking. As we become more familiar with this silent dimension of awareness, we naturally begin to notice how much of our suffering comes not from present moment reality, but from mental time travel, dwelling on past regrets or anticipating future difficulties. The Buddha frequently emphasized the importance of freeing ourselves from excessive preoccupation with past and future in order to live with greater presence and peace in the here and now. Consider how much of your mental life typically involves thinking about the past or future rather than experiencing the present moment directly. Many of us spend hours each day ruminating about past events, replaying conversations, second-guessing decisions, or dwelling on perceived failures or disappointments. Similarly, we project into the future, worrying about what might happen, planning for contingencies, or fantasizing about desired outcomes. While some reflection on past experience and consideration of future possibilities is necessary and useful, problems arise when these mental activities become compulsive and disconnected from present reality. Buddhist practice helps us recognize this tendency and gradually shift the balance toward greater presence in the here and now. One clear sign that healing is occurring in this area is when memories of past mistakes or disappointments no longer trigger the same intense cycles of shame, regret, or rumination. It's not that you forget what happened or dismiss genuine lessons to be learned, but the emotional charge diminishes. You can acknowledge what occurred without being pulled back into the full emotional experience as if it were happening again right now. You might notice this healing in how you talk about past experiences. Rather than telling the same stories with the same emotional intensity year after year, there's a growing sense of perspective. Yes, that happened, and it was difficult, and I've grown since then. The past remains part of your history without defining your present identity or consuming your current awareness. This healing extends to how we relate to future uncertainties as well. Without Buddhist practice, many of us spend tremendous energy worrying about scenarios that exist only in imagination rather than present reality. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself becoming less prone to anxious projection and more able to prepare appropriately for what's ahead without the added suffering of emotional reactivity to events that haven't happened. This shift doesn't mean abandoning responsible planning or preparation. In fact, when we're not consuming mental energy with anxiety about the future, we can often make clearer, more effective plans. The difference is in the emotional quality. Planning from centered presence rather than fearful reactivity creates very different results and experience. Many people report that letting go of past regrets and future anxieties significantly increases their energy levels. Mental time travel consumes tremendous resources, often leaving us feeling drained despite having been physically inactive. As we learn to return to the present moment more frequently, that energy becomes available for actual living rather than mental rehearsal or replay. You might notice this healing in how you approach daily tasks and activities. When we're mentally elsewhere, reliving past events or anticipating future ones, we miss much of what's happening right now and often perform current activities with less effectiveness and enjoyment. As healing progresses, you might find yourself more fully engaged with whatever you're doing, whether it's work, conversation, eating, or rest. Relationships particularly benefit from this temporal liberation. When interacting with others while mentally preoccupied with past or future, we miss opportunities for genuine connection. As healing occurs, you might notice yourself actually listening when others speak rather than planning your response, fully engaging in shared activities rather than mentally elsewhere. and appreciating the unique qualities of each interaction rather than comparing to past experiences or future expectations. This present-centered awareness especially transforms how we spend leisure time. Many of us have had the experience of taking a vacation or break, but remaining mentally entangled with work concerns or other preoccupations, essentially missing the experience we've arranged for ourselves. As healing progresses, you might find yourself more able to actually be where you are, enjoying the unique qualities of each experience without constant mental elsewhereness. Even our approach to goals and aspirations shifts with this temporal healing. Without Buddhist practice, we often pursue goals with the unconscious belief that only when we reach them will we experience the peace, satisfaction, or well-being we seek. As healing occurs, you might notice yourself pursuing meaningful objectives while simultaneously appreciating the journey rather than postponing your sense of fulfillment until some future achievement. The freedom from excessive mental time travel doesn't mean never thinking about past or future. It means engaging with past and future in ways that serve present well-being and effectiveness rather than detract from it. We can learn from past experiences without being defined by them, and plan for the future without anxious preoccupation with what hasn't yet happened. Many people find that this temporal healing brings a profound sense of homecoming to their lives. Rather than always mentally rushing ahead or looking back, there's a growing recognition that life only ever happens in the present moment. The past exists now as memory, and the future exists now as anticipation, and the only point of power and actual experience is this moment. This recognition doesn't diminish the importance of learning from history or planning wisely, but it places these activities within their proper context as tools for living well now rather than escapes from present reality. Perhaps most significantly, healing our relationship with time reveals something surprising. Many of the qualities we seek through achievement, acquisition, or special experiences are already available in ordinary moments when we're fully present. The peace, connection, and aliveness we often think we need to create through special circumstances are natural qualities of awareness itself when we're not constantly pulled away by regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. As we learn to live more fully in the present moment rather than being caught in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, we naturally become more available to notice and appreciate what's actually here in our lives right now. This growing awareness opens the door to another powerful aspect of Buddhist wisdom, the development of gratitude as a daily practice. While many spiritual traditions emphasize thankfulness, Buddhism offers particularly practical approaches to cultivating genuine appreciation that significantly contributes to healing and well-being. Gratitude might sound simple, just being thankful for what you have, but in practice, it represents a radical shift from our default mental patterns. The human mind evolved with what psychologists call a negativity bias. We naturally notice, remember, and give more weight to negative experiences than positive ones. This bias helped our ancestors survive by staying vigilant for potential dangers. But in modern life, it often creates a distorted perception where problems and lacks seem more real and significant than the many positive aspects of our experience. You might notice healing in this area when you begin spontaneously recognizing things to be grateful for throughout your day without deliberate effort. Perhaps you find yourself appreciating the warmth of sunlight through a window, the reliability of clean running water, the support of a comfortable chair, or the convenience of technology that connects you with others. These moments of natural appreciation often bring a sense of contentment and sufficiency that contrasts with the usual state of wanting something different or more than what's present. Many people first experience this shift through formal gratitude practices, such as keeping a gratitude journal or taking time each day to deliberately acknowledge things they appreciate. While these structured approaches can be helpful starting points, the real healing occurs when gratitude begins arising naturally throughout daily life rather than being confined to specific practices. You might catch yourself noticing the taste of your morning coffee with genuine appreciation, feeling thankful for the functionality of your body as you walk upstairs, or experiencing a moment of gratitude for the people who built the infrastructure you rely on daily. This growing capacity for appreciation often extends beyond material conveniences to recognition of less tangible gifts, the kindness of strangers, the beauty of changing seasons, the resilience of the human spirit during difficult times, or the simple miracle of being alive and conscious to experience anything at all. As this awareness deepens, you might find yourself grateful even during challenging circumstances, not denying difficulties but simultaneously recognizing the resources, support, and opportunities that remain available. One particularly powerful aspect of developing gratitude is how it transforms our relationship with what we already have versus what we think we need. Our consumer culture constantly reinforces the message that we lack important things, that happiness, success, or acceptance requires purchasing the next product or experience. As gratitude develops, you might notice yourself becoming more aware of the abundance already present in your life, finding genuine satisfaction in what you have rather than constantly focusing on what's missing or what could be improved. This shift doesn't mean abandoning aspirations or becoming complacent with problematic situations that should be changed. Rather, it means approaching both contentment and positive change from a foundation of recognizing what's already working and available rather than from a mindset of scarcity and lack. Paradoxically, this appreciative awareness often creates better conditions for effective change than the anxious striving that comes from feeling fundamentally unsatisfied with current reality. The development of gratitude particularly transforms how we experience ordinary moments. Without this awareness, we tend to take for granted the countless things that are functioning well in our lives, from bodily systems working properly to social infrastructure supporting our daily activities. These background positives easily go unnoticed until they're disrupted. As gratitude develops, you might find yourself regularly acknowledging these foundational supports rather than only noticing them when they're absent or threatened. Many people report that gratitude practice helps them navigate difficult periods more effectively. When facing challenges, our attention naturally fixates on what's wrong or problematic. While this focus is understandable, exclusively attending to difficulties often creates a distorted perception that everything is going wrong, when in reality, many aspects of life continue functioning well even during hard times. The ability to acknowledge both difficulties and continuing sources of support creates a more balanced perspective that supports resilience. You might notice this healing in how you talk about your life circumstances. Rather than primarily focusing on problems or complaints when asked how you're doing, you might find yourself spontaneously mentioning positive aspects alongside challenges. This balanced awareness doesn't mean suppressing genuine difficulties or maintaining toxic positivity, but developing a more complete and accurate perception that includes both challenges and supports. Relationships often show particularly significant transformation through gratitude practice. Without this awareness, we easily focus on the ways others disappoint or frustrate us rather than appreciating their positive qualities and contributions. As gratitude develops, you might notice yourself more frequently acknowledging the specific things you value about people in your life, both directly to them and in your own thinking. This appreciative awareness strengthens connections and often brings out more of the very qualities you appreciate. Many people find that developing gratitude creates a powerful antidote to the comparison mind that generates so much suffering in modern life. Social media and advertising constantly expose us to curated highlights of others' lives and possessions, triggering feelings of inadequacy about our own circumstances. As gratitude strengthens, these external comparisons lose some of their power, as your attention naturally orients more toward the unique gifts and opportunities in your own life rather than what others appear to have. Perhaps most significantly, the development of gratitude gradually shifts your baseline emotional state. Rather than needing special circumstances to feel good, you discover an underlying sense of appreciation that remains accessible even during ordinary or challenging times. This doesn't mean never experiencing difficult emotions, But these emotions arise within a broader context of recognizing the many supports and resources that continue to be available. As gratitude becomes more established in daily awareness, it naturally leads to a profound shift in how we understand happiness itself. Our cultural narratives often suggest that lasting happiness comes through specific achievements, acquisitions, or circumstances, getting the right job, partner, home, appearance, or experiences. Buddhist wisdom offers a radically different perspective on what creates true well-being, and recognizing this different understanding represents a significant milestone in healing. The Buddha observed that human beings constantly chase pleasant experiences while trying to avoid unpleasant ones, operating on the assumption that having more pleasure and less pain will create lasting happiness. Yet despite our best efforts to arrange conditions just right, satisfaction remains elusive. Even when we get what we want, the happiness often fades more quickly than expected, or new desires arise that keep us searching for the next thing that promises fulfillment. You might notice healing in this area when you begin recognizing the difference between experiences that offer immediate gratification versus those that contribute to deeper well-being. Perhaps you observe how certain pleasures, like mindlessly scrolling social media, impulsive shopping, or excessive eating or drinking, provide momentary distraction or pleasure but often leave you feeling worse afterward. Meanwhile, activities that initially require more effort, like connecting deeply with others, creating something meaningful, or engaging in contemplative practices, might bring more sustainable satisfaction. This growing discernment doesn't mean rejecting pleasure or adopting an austere lifestyle. Buddhist wisdom doesn't suggest that enjoyment is problematic, but recognizes that mistaking temporary pleasant feelings for lasting happiness leads to cycles of craving and disappointment. As this understanding develops, you might find yourself naturally drawn toward experiences and choices that create genuine well-being rather than just momentary highs, not from discipline or self-denial, but from direct recognition of what actually nourishes you. Many people report that this shift in understanding happiness transforms their relationship with material possessions. Without this recognition, we often accumulate things based on the belief that having more or better stuff will create lasting satisfaction. As your understanding of happiness deepens, you might notice yourself becoming more selective about what you bring into your life, choosing quality over quantity and considering the longer-term impacts of purchases rather than just immediate gratification. This changing relationship with happiness particularly affects how we approach work and career. Our culture often promotes the idea that success in work, whether through status, achievement, or financial reward, will create fulfillment. While meaningful work certainly contributes to well-being, the belief that professional accomplishments alone will bring lasting happiness often leads to disappointment or burnout. As healing progresses, you might find yourself making career choices based on a more balanced consideration of what brings genuine satisfaction rather than just external markers of success. Relationships show perhaps the most significant transformation through this changing understanding of happiness. Many relationships suffer from explicit or implicit expectations that another person should make us happy or complete us in some way. As you recognize that lasting happiness cannot depend entirely on specific external conditions, including how others behave, you might notice your relationships becoming less burdened by impossible expectations and more grounded in genuine connection and mutual support. Even our approach to health and wellness benefits from this shifting perspective on happiness. Many people pursue physical appearance goals or health practices based on the belief that reaching a certain weight, fitness level, or appearance will finally allow them to be happy. While physical well-being certainly contributes to quality of life, the expectation that any particular bodily condition will create lasting fulfillment often leads to frustration. As healing progresses, you might find yourself approaching physical self-care from appreciation for what your body can do and how it feels rather than just how it looks or measures against external standards. Many people discover that this understanding transforms how they use their free time. Without recognizing what creates true happiness, Leisure often becomes consumed by passive entertainment or stimulation seeking that provides distraction without genuine refreshment. As your understanding deepens, you might find yourself naturally drawn toward activities that create more meaningful satisfaction, whether through creativity, learning, connection with nature, service to others, or simply the full enjoyment of sensory experiences without needing to constantly seek more intense stimulation. This changing relationship with happiness doesn't mean abandoning goals or becoming passive about improving life conditions. Rather, it means pursuing positive changes from a different foundation, not from the belief that you'll finally be happy when certain conditions are met, but from recognition that well-being comes more from how you relate to experience than from specific external circumstances. Paradoxically, this shift often leads to more effective action and better outcomes, as it comes from clarity rather than the anxiety of feeling that happiness always lies in some future achievement. Perhaps most significantly, recognizing the nature of true happiness reveals something surprising: that many of the qualities we associate with happiness, such as peace, contentment, and joy, are more accessible than we've been led to believe. Rather than requiring perfect circumstances or extraordinary achievements, these qualities can emerge from simple practices of presence, gratitude, generosity, and connection that are available in ordinary moments of everyday life. This recognition doesn't diminish the importance of working to improve conditions for ourselves and others, but places these efforts within a more balanced understanding of what actually creates lasting well-being. As we develop a clearer understanding of what creates genuine happiness, we naturally become more interested in working skillfully with the emotional states that often drive our behavior. The Buddhist tradition offers remarkably sophisticated approaches to managing difficult emotions, approaches that don't deny or suppress feelings, but transform our relationship with them. This aspect of Buddhist psychology provides practical tools for finding freedom from destructive emotional patterns that might otherwise control our lives. Think about the last time you experienced a strong emotion like anger, fear, jealousy, or craving. For many of us, these emotions can feel overwhelming, leading either to impulsive actions we later regret or to painful suppression that creates internal tension. Buddhist practice offers a middle path, neither acting out emotions nor pushing them away, but relating to them with mindful awareness that creates space for wiser responses. One clear sign that healing is occurring through Buddhist practice is when you begin experiencing difficult emotions without being completely controlled by them. You might notice anger arising, for example, and feel its physical manifestations: increased heart rate, tightness in the chest or jaw, heated sensations, while maintaining enough awareness to choose your response rather than reacting automatically. This doesn't mean the anger disappears instantly, but rather that it no longer has the power to completely dictate your behavior. A key skill in this process is learning to name emotions as they arise. When a challenging feeling emerges, simply noting anger is present or fear is arising creates a subtle but significant shift. Instead of being fully identified with the emotion, "I am angry," there's recognition that this is a temporary state passing through your awareness. This small space between yourself and the emotion makes all the difference in how you respond. Many people report that developing this skill begins to change their relationship with emotions in daily life. Rather than seeing certain feelings as problems to be eliminated, you might begin recognizing all emotions as information, temporary states that arise in response to conditions and provide data about your needs, values, and perceptions. This shift from judging emotions to being curious about them creates a more balanced relationship with your emotional life. This emotional awareness creates space between trigger and reaction, what psychologists sometimes call the pause button, between stimulus and response. Without this pause, we tend to react habitually to emotional triggers, often in ways that create more problems than they solve. As this capacity develops, you might notice yourself responding more thoughtfully in situations that previously would have triggered automatic reactions, perhaps taking a breath before responding to a provocative comment. noticing an urge to emotionally eat without immediately acting on it, or feeling anxiety without letting it drive avoidance behavior. The Buddhist approach to emotions represents a middle path between two common extremes. Many of us were taught either to suppress and control emotions, especially negative ones, or to express and indulge them without restraint. Buddhist psychology recognizes that neither extreme creates true emotional well-being. As healing progresses, you might find yourself developing a third option, fully acknowledging emotions while maintaining enough awareness to respond skillfully rather than reactively. This changing relationship with emotions often begins with relatively minor irritations or disappointments before extending to stronger feelings. You might notice yourself recovering more quickly from small frustrations that previously might have ruined your entire day, or maintaining perspective during minor disappointments rather than catastrophizing. This doesn't mean never feeling upset, but developing resilience that allows emotions to move through your experience without getting stuck. Many people report that this emotional freedom particularly transforms their close relationships. Without skills for working with difficult emotions, relationships easily become arenas for reactive patterns, blaming, withdrawing, controlling, or placating when strong feelings arise. As emotional awareness develops, you might notice yourself staying engaged during challenging interactions rather than shutting down or lashing out, creating possibilities for deeper understanding and resolution rather than repeated conflict. Physical awareness plays an important role in this emotional healing. Emotions aren't just mental events, but whole-body experiences involving sensations, energy shifts, and physiological changes. As your practice deepens, you might find yourself becoming more attuned to how emotions manifest physically, perhaps noticing the tightness in your stomach that signals anxiety, the heaviness in your chest that accompanies sadness, or the energetic charge of anger or excitement. This bodily awareness itself often helps prevent emotions from becoming overwhelming, as you can work with physical sensations directly rather than getting caught in mental stories about the feelings. One particularly powerful shift involves recognizing the difference between primary emotions and secondary reactions to those emotions. For example, you might feel initial disappointment, primary emotion, when plans change, followed by shame about feeling disappointed, secondary reaction, followed by anger to protect against the shame, tertiary reaction. This layering of emotional reactions often intensifies suffering far beyond the original feeling. As healing progresses, you might notice yourself more able to acknowledge primary emotions directly without adding layers of judgment or reactivity. The Buddhist understanding of emotions doesn't suggest that certain feelings are inherently problematic or that the goal is to reach a state where you never experience difficult emotions. Rather, it recognizes that all emotions naturally arise and pass based on conditions, and suffering comes not from having emotions, but from how we relate to them. The freedom isn't from having feelings, but from being controlled by them, a subtle but crucial distinction. Even particularly challenging emotions like rage, intense grief, or deep fear become more workable through these practices. You might find yourself developing the capacity to be present with extremely strong feelings without either acting them out impulsively or shutting down completely. This doesn't mean the emotions aren't painful or intense, but they no longer seem unmanageable or like threats to your basic well-being. Perhaps most significantly, this emotional freedom doesn't require controlling or changing your feelings, an approach that often backfires, creating more internal struggle. Instead, it comes from changing your relationship with emotions through mindful awareness that neither clings to pleasant feelings nor rejects unpleasant ones. This non-reactive presence allows emotions to move through your experience naturally without creating additional suffering through resistance or identification. As we develop greater skill in working with emotions, we often notice that our actions naturally begin aligning more consistently with our deeper values. This brings us to another crucial aspect of Buddhist healing, the development of ethical living not as external obligation but as genuine self-care. Many spiritual traditions present ethics primarily as rules for behavior or moral obligations. But Buddhism offers a more practical perspective. Ethical choices create immediate well-being, while harmful actions inevitably generate suffering, regardless of whether anyone else knows about them. The Buddha offered ethical guidelines known as precepts, typically focused on avoiding harm through actions like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or using intoxicants mindlessly. These weren't presented as commandments from an authority, but as observations about which choices tend to create suffering and which tend to create well-being. You might notice healing in this area when you begin experiencing ethical choices not as restrictions but as acts of care for yourself and others that create immediate benefits. One clear sign of this healing is decreased internal conflict around decision-making. When our actions align with our deeper values, we experience a natural sense of integrity and coherence. When they don't, we often feel internal division and tension, even if we try to justify our choices. As ethical awareness develops, you might notice yourself naturally making choices that create internal harmony rather than conflict, not from external pressure but from direct recognition of what genuinely supports your well-being. This ethical clarity particularly shows up in how we navigate challenging situations. Without clear ethical guidelines, decision-making often becomes complicated and stressful, especially when different values or desires seem to conflict. As ethical awareness strengthens, you might find decision-making becoming simpler in many cases, as options that would create harm for yourself or others are automatically excluded from consideration. This doesn't mean all decisions become easy, but there's often greater clarity about which paths align with your deeper values. Many people report that developing ethical awareness significantly reduces anxiety and rumination. When we act in ways that contradict our values, we often spend considerable mental energy justifying our behavior or worrying about potential consequences. As your actions increasingly align with your values, you might notice less need for self-justification and greater ease in simply being straightforward about your choices and their impacts. Relationships often show the most dramatic benefits from ethical development. Trust forms the foundation of meaningful connection, and it's built through consistent behavior that demonstrates care and respect. As ethical living becomes more established, you might notice your relationships deepening through increased trustworthiness and clearer boundaries. Others can rely on your word, count on your consideration of their well-being, and trust that you'll communicate honestly rather than manipulatively. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or judgmental in your expectations of yourself or others. In fact, ethical development typically includes growing compassion for the complexity of human behavior and the mistakes we all make. The difference is in the general direction and intention of your actions rather than perfect adherence to ideals in every situation. The development of ethical awareness particularly transforms how we handle conflicts or situations where our interests seem to oppose others. Without ethical guidelines, these situations often default to self-protection at others' expense or self-sacrifice that builds resentment. As ethical clarity develops, you might find yourself naturally seeking solutions that consider everyone's well-being rather than assuming that someone must lose for others to win. Many people notice that ethical development creates a positive feedback loop in their lives. When we act in ways that harm others or contradict our values, we often feel subtle shame or discomfort that we may try to numb through various distractions. This numbing makes us less sensitive to the effects of our actions, potentially leading to further harmful choices. When actions align with values, we experience natural well-being that makes us more attuned and sensitive rather than less, supporting even wiser choices in the future. This ethical living extends beyond obvious harmful actions to subtler choices that affect well-being. You might notice yourself becoming more mindful of speech patterns that create unnecessary suffering, gossip that damages reputations, harsh criticism that diminishes others, or complaints that spread negativity. This doesn't mean never expressing concerns or offering feedback, but doing so in ways that support understanding and growth rather than simply venting negativity. Digital behavior represents a particularly relevant area for ethical awareness in modern life. The relative anonymity and distance of online interactions can make it easier to engage in speech or actions we would avoid in person. As ethical awareness develops, you might notice yourself applying the same guidelines to digital communication that you would to face-to-face interactions, recognizing that words on a screen still impact real people and communities. Perhaps most significantly, ethical development helps heal the artificial separation between caring for yourself and caring for others. Our culture often frames self-care and consideration for others as opposing values, creating unnecessary conflict. Buddhist ethics recognizes that genuine well-being is interdependent. What truly harms others ultimately harms ourselves as well, while choices that support collective flourishing create the conditions for personal well-being too. This recognition doesn't mean sacrificing genuine needs for others' preferences or ignoring real conflicts of interest that sometimes arise. Rather, it encourages seeking solutions that consider the whole system rather than just isolated parts. As this understanding deepens, ethical choices increasingly feel like care for the entire web of life that includes but extends beyond your individual existence. As our ethical awareness deepens and we experience the immediate benefits of aligning our actions with our deeper values, we naturally encounter another vital aspect of Buddhist wisdom, the cultivation of patience. In our fast-paced, instant gratification culture, patience might seem like an outdated virtue. However, Buddhist practice reveals patience, known as khanti in Pali, as an essential quality that creates significant healing in our relationship with time, expectations, and the natural unfolding of life processes. Think about how often impatience arises in your daily experience, waiting in line at a store, sitting in traffic, dealing with technology that works slower than expected, or simply wanting results from efforts before they've had time to develop. Our modern environment has conditioned us to expect immediate responses and quick fixes, creating a mindset where any delay or obstacle triggers disproportionate frustration. This constant state of rushing and impatience creates tremendous stress, while paradoxically making experiences seem less satisfying when they do arrive. One clear sign that healing is occurring through Buddhist wisdom is when you notice minor inconveniences and delays no longer triggering the same level of frustration they once did. Perhaps you find yourself waiting in a long checkout line and, instead of the familiar irritation and repeated checking of the time, you simply use the moment as an opportunity to practice presence, feeling your breathing, noticing sensations in your body, or simply observing your surroundings with curious attention. This doesn't mean you enjoy waiting, but the experience no longer creates significant suffering. Many people first notice this developing patience in their reactions to technology. When websites take longer to load than expected, when devices need updates at inconvenient moments, or when digital tools don't immediately perform as desired, our default reaction is often irritation or even anger that seems out of proportion to the actual inconvenience. As patience develops, you might find yourself responding to these minor technological frustrations with a simple acknowledgement, "This is taking longer than I expected," without the additional layers of emotional reactivity that previously would have created genuine suffering. The development of patience particularly transforms how we relate to unpleasant experiences. Without this quality, we tend to immediately seek escape or distraction from anything uncomfortable, creating patterns of avoidance that actually increase our sensitivity to discomfort. As patience strengthens, you might notice yourself developing the capacity to stay present during challenging experiences, physical discomfort, difficult emotions, awkward social situations, without immediately needing to fix, change, or escape them. This doesn't mean passively enduring unnecessary suffering, but developing the resilience to be with difficulty when it arises without being overwhelmed by it. This growing patience often extends to our approach to personal growth and spiritual practice. Many people begin meditation or other contemplative practices with expectations of quick transformation, becoming discouraged when changes don't happen as rapidly as hoped. As patience develops, you might find yourself recognizing that meaningful change typically happens gradually, with progress occurring in its own timing rather than according to your preferred schedule. This patient perspective allows for sustainable long-term practice rather than cycles of intense effort followed by disappointment and abandonment. Relationships particularly benefit from developing patience. Without this quality, conversations easily become exercises in waiting for your turn to speak rather than truly listening to understand another person. As patience grows, you might notice yourself becoming more capable of fully hearing others without rushing to respond, fix problems, or share your own experience. This patient listening creates space for deeper understanding and connection that rushed interactions rarely achieve. Many people report that patience transforms their experience of nature and natural processes. Our technological world has conditioned us to expect immediate results and constant stimulation. The natural world operates on different timescales. Seasons change gradually. Plants grow at their own pace. Ecological systems evolve over years rather than minutes. As patience develops, you might find yourself more able to appreciate and align with these natural rhythms, finding satisfaction in gradual processes rather than only in immediate outcomes. This patient perspective particularly helps with creative endeavors and learning new skills. Without patience, we easily become discouraged when mastery doesn't come quickly, often abandoning potentially rewarding activities because we can't tolerate the awkward beginning stages. As patience strengthens, you might notice yourself more willing to engage with the natural learning process, including the inevitable mistakes and challenges, recognizing them as necessary steps rather than evidence of failure or lack of talent. One especially valuable aspect of developing patience is recognizing the difference between situations that genuinely require immediate action and those where patience allows for more thoughtful, effective response. Without this discernment, we tend to approach everything with the same sense of urgency, creating unnecessary stress and often less optimal outcomes. As patience develops, you might find yourself more capable of distinguishing between true emergencies and situations that benefit from giving time for things to unfold or for your own understanding to deepen before acting. Many people notice that cultivating patience helps heal their relationship with timing in general. Without this quality, we easily fall into believing that things should happen on our preferred schedule, creating frustration when reality doesn't conform to our expectations. As patience grows, you might find yourself more accepting of natural timing, recognizing that people, projects, and processes have their own developmental trajectories that can't always be rushed without causing damage. This doesn't mean never establishing deadlines or having time-based goals, but holding these structures with enough flexibility to adapt to what's actually happening rather than rigidly insisting on predetermined timelines. Perhaps most significantly, patience helps us recognize that meaningful transformation itself takes time. In our quick-fix culture, we've been conditioned to expect immediate results from our efforts, whether starting a new diet, learning a skill, building a relationship, or developing spiritual qualities. The Buddhist understanding of patience acknowledges that lasting change typically happens through consistent practice over time rather than dramatic overnight transformation. As this understanding deepens, you might find yourself more committed to steady, sustainable practices rather than expecting immediate breakthroughs. This patient perspective creates a particular kind of freedom, the freedom from the tyranny of rushing and the constant feeling that you should be further along than you are. When we're caught in impatience, we're never fully in the current moment but always leaning into some future point we believe will be better or more complete. Patience allows for full presence with what's actually happening now, creating a more grounded, centered experience regardless of external circumstances or where you perceive yourself to be on your journey. As patience continues to develop, we often begin experiencing glimpses of a profound truth that Buddhist teachings point to, the recognition of our inherent Buddha nature. This concept might initially sound abstract or mystical, but it refers to a very practical reality that we can experience directly, beneath our conditioned patterns, reactive emotions, and limiting beliefs lies an innate wholeness and basic goodness that is our true nature. Many spiritual seekers operate from an unconscious belief that they are fundamentally flawed or incomplete and need to add something from outside themselves to become worthy or complete. Buddhist wisdom offers a radically different perspective, that our essential nature is already whole and contains innate wisdom, compassion, and awareness that can be uncovered rather than needing to be created or acquired. This recognition, even in brief moments, brings profound healing to the sense of inadequacy that drives so much of human suffering. You might notice the first signs of this healing when you experience moments of recognizing your fundamental worthiness that isn't dependent on achievements, appearance, possessions, or others' approval. Perhaps during meditation, in nature, or even during an ordinary activity, you suddenly feel a sense of basic all-rightness that doesn't need to be earned or proven. These glimpses might be brief at first, but they offer a taste of a way of being that isn't constructed on the shifting sands of external validation or accomplishment. Many people report that connecting with this Buddha nature creates a profound sense of coming home to themselves after years or even decades of feeling somehow alienated from their own experience, rather than constantly trying to become someone different or better according to external standards. There's recognition of an authentic self that has been present all along beneath the layers of conditioning, social masks, and habitual patterns. This doesn't mean narcissistic self-focus, but a genuine alignment with your deeper nature that paradoxically allows for more authentic connection with others. As this recognition deepens, you might notice yourself beginning to trust your innate wisdom rather than constantly seeking guidance or validation from outside authorities. This doesn't mean rejecting useful information or perspectives from others, but there's a growing capacity to check external input against your own deeper knowing rather than automatically deferring to others' opinions about how you should live, what you should value, or what's true for you. This internal reference point creates a kind of stability that doesn't depend on constantly checking with others to confirm your perceptions or choices. The recognition of Buddha nature particularly transforms how we relate to mistakes and perceived failings. Without this understanding, errors easily become evidence of fundamental flaws or reasons for harsh self-judgment. As connection with Buddha nature strengthens, you might find yourself responding to mistakes with greater kindness and perspective, recognizing them as temporary actions or misunderstandings rather than reflections of your essential worth. This doesn't mean avoiding responsibility for harmful actions, but approaching them from a place of fundamental wholeness rather than shame-based identity. This recognition extends beyond ourselves to how we perceive others. As we connect with our own Buddha nature, we naturally begin recognizing that same essential goodness in all beings, even when it's obscured by unskillful behaviors or difficult personality patterns. You might notice yourself becoming more able to maintain awareness of others' inherent worth and potential even during conflicts or challenging interactions. This doesn't mean naively ignoring harmful behaviors or staying in dangerous situations, but it does transform how you interpret others' actions and what you believe is possible for them. Many people find that awakening to Buddha nature creates a significant shift in their sense of identity, rather than being primarily identified with your personal history, characteristics, roles, or accomplishments. You begin experiencing yourself as the awareness that witnesses and holds all these changing aspects. This doesn't mean denying your unique individual qualities, but recognizing them as expressions of your nature rather than the fundamental definition of who you are. This shift creates a remarkable freedom from the constant pressure to defend or promote a particular self-image. This changing sense of identity often brings healing to the fear of death that underlies much human anxiety. When we're completely identified with our physical body and personal story, the inevitable end of these naturally creates terror. As connection with Buddha nature develops, you might experience a growing sense that something essential about you isn't limited to these temporary forms. This doesn't require belief in specific afterlife concepts, but emerges from direct experience of an awareness that seems more fundamental than the changing contents it contains. Many people report that recognizing Buddha nature transforms their approach to spiritual practice itself. Rather than seeing practice as something that will eventually make you enlightened or worthy if you do it perfectly enough for long enough, it becomes a process of uncovering or remembering what's already present but obscured. This shift from a self-improvement project to a homecoming journey often brings a quality of ease and joy to practice that was missing when it was driven primarily by a sense of inadequacy or striving. Perhaps most significantly, awakening to Buddha nature helps heal the painful sense of separation and isolation that characterizes much of human experience. When we operate primarily from conditioned patterns and ego identity, we experience ourselves as separate entities constantly seeking connection or defending against threats. As awareness of our true nature deepens, we begin recognizing that the same consciousness or awareness that looks out through our eyes is fundamentally not separate from the awareness in others. This doesn't mean losing appropriate boundaries or individual perspective, but it does transform the existential loneliness that comes from believing we are isolated entities in a foreign universe. This recognition of Buddha nature doesn't happen all at once for most people, but emerges gradually through practice, with glimpses becoming more frequent and sustained over time. Each recognition creates a kind of imprint that makes subsequent recognitions more accessible, gradually shifting our baseline identity from conditioned patterns to essential nature. This shift represents one of the most profound healings available through Buddhist wisdom, the discovery that what we've been seeking through endless doing and becoming has been present all along in the simple fact of our being. As we recognize our essential Buddha nature and begin to identify less with our conditioned patterns, this naturally transforms how we relate to others. Our relationships, from intimate partnerships to family connections, friendships, and even brief interactions with strangers, begin to shift in remarkable ways. Buddhist wisdom offers profound guidance for creating healthier, more authentic connections that benefit everyone involved. And these transformed relationships represent one of the clearest signs that healing is occurring through Buddhist practice. Think about how many relationship difficulties stem from neediness and attachment, the often unconscious belief that others should make us complete, happy, or secure. When we operate from this mindset, relationships easily become exercises in manipulation, control, or desperate clinging as we try to make others behave in ways that help us feel better. As we connect more with our own inherent wholeness, you might notice yourself becoming less emotionally dependent in relationships. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant, but paradoxically allows for deeper connection because you're relating from fullness rather than lack. One of the clearest signs of this relational healing is a shift in how you listen to others. Without Buddhist practice, many of us listen primarily to formulate our response, defend our position, or relate what's being said to our own experience. As mindfulness and compassion develop, you might notice yourself truly listening to understand rather than to respond, creating space for others to express themselves fully while being genuinely curious about their experience rather than immediately filtering it through your own perspective. This quality of presence transforms even brief interactions. You might find yourself making actual eye contact with the cashier at the grocery store, noticing the humanity of the person serving your coffee, or bringing full attention to conversations rather than being partially distracted by your phone or mental planning. These small moments of genuine connection create ripples of positive impact far beyond what might seem immediately significant. Many people report that Buddhist practice particularly helps transform how they handle conflicts or disagreements. When operating primarily from ego identity, conflicts easily become threatening situations where we feel we must defend our position, prove ourselves right, or protect our self-image. As awareness of our deeper nature strengthens, You might notice yourself approaching conflicts with more curiosity and less defensiveness, genuinely interested in understanding different perspectives rather than needing to establish your view as superior. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or abandoning your principles. In fact, many people find they can actually communicate their own needs and boundaries more clearly and firmly when coming from centered awareness rather than reactivity. The difference is in the underlying motivation and emotional tone, speaking truth from clarity rather than attacking from fear or defensiveness. The development of compassion particularly transforms how we interpret others' difficult or unskillful behaviors. Without this understanding, we easily label others as bad, selfish, or wrong based on actions we find problematic. As compassion deepens, you might notice yourself naturally considering what might be driving others' behavior, what fears, unmet needs, or misunderstandings might be shaping their choices. This wider perspective doesn't mean excusing harmful actions, but allows for responding with wisdom rather than just reaction. Many people find that Buddhist practice helps heal the tendency to relate to others primarily through roles rather than authentic presence. We often interact with people based on the function they serve in our lives, partner, colleague, service provider, rather than meeting them as full human beings. As awareness develops, you might notice yourself relating more directly to the essential person beyond their role, creating more genuine connections even in apparently routine interactions. This transformation particularly affects close relationships, where roles can become especially rigid and limiting. Long-term partnerships easily fall into fixed patterns where each person is expected to behave in certain ways and fulfill particular functions. As Buddhist practice deepens, you might find yourself and your partner experiencing more freedom to evolve and express different aspects of yourselves rather than being confined to established roles and expectations. Communication itself changes as Buddhist wisdom permeates relationships. Many conversational habits, interrupting, waiting for your turn rather than truly listening, formulating responses before the other person has finished speaking, create disconnection rather than understanding. As mindfulness develops, you might notice these patterns and naturally begin communicating in ways that create more genuine connection, listening fully, pausing before responding, speaking from present awareness rather than rehearsed positions. One particularly significant shift involves moving from primarily transactional interactions to genuine care and connection. Many relationships contain an underlying current of "what can I get from this person?" or "what do they want from me?" As Buddhist practice deepens, you might find yourself naturally more interested in contributing to others' well-being without calculating what you'll receive in return. This doesn't mean allowing yourself to be exploited, but the underlying motivation shifts from self-protection or gain to genuine care. This changing relationship dynamic often creates a positive feedback loop. As you relate to others with more presence, authenticity, and compassion, they frequently respond in kind, creating upward spirals of connection rather than the downward spirals of reactivity that characterize many interactions. This doesn't mean all relationships magically become perfect, but the overall quality and depth of connection typically improve as your own practice deepens. Perhaps most importantly, Buddhist practice helps heal the sense of fundamental separation that underlies much relational suffering. When we experience ourselves as isolated entities in a potentially hostile world, relationships easily become strategic alliances for survival or sources of validation for a fragile sense of self. As we recognize our interconnected nature, relationships can transform into expressions of that deeper unity rather than attempts to overcome an illusory separation. This healing extends beyond human relationships to how we relate to all living beings. You might notice growing awareness of and care for the well-being of animals, plants, and entire ecosystems, recognizing that their flourishing is inseparable from your own. This expanded circle of concern naturally influences choices in many areas of life, from consumption patterns to how you interact with the natural world. The transformation of relationships through Buddhist principles doesn't happen instantly or perfectly. Old patterns re-emerge, especially during stress or conflict. The difference is that with continued practice, you develop the awareness to recognize when you've slipped into reactive patterns and the skills to return to more conscious relating. This process itself, noticing, acknowledging, and gently redirecting, becomes a profound practice that deepens over a lifetime. As our relationships begin to reflect Buddhist wisdom, we face a practical challenge. How do we integrate these ancient Eastern teachings into our contemporary Western lives? This integration represents one of the most important aspects of healing through Buddhist practice, finding ways to embody timeless principles within our actual life circumstances rather than trying to force our modern existence into traditional Eastern forms or treating spiritual practice as something separate from real life. The Buddha himself emphasized the importance of adapting teaching methods to different cultures and individuals while maintaining the essential principles. This adaptive approach becomes especially important when bringing practices developed in ancient Asian monastic settings into busy Western households, workplaces, and digital environments. You might notice healing in this area when you find practical ways to apply Buddhist principles to modern challenges like digital distraction, consumer culture, work-life balance, and environmental concerns. Many people begin their Buddhist journey by trying to imitate Eastern forms exactly as presented, perhaps sitting in full lotus position for long meditation periods, adopting Buddhist terminology for everything, or trying to transplant monastic schedules into lay life. While traditional forms contain valuable wisdom, healing often progresses when you discover personalized practices that honor both the essential principles and the realities of your actual life circumstances. This might mean shorter, more frequent meditation sessions rather than lengthy sits, contemplative walking during your commute, or mindfulness practices integrated into everyday activities like cooking or cleaning. Technology presents one of the biggest challenges in integrating Buddhist wisdom into contemporary life. Our devices offer tremendous benefits but can also create constant distraction, comparison, and disconnection from direct experience. Rather than either rejecting technology entirely or using it mindlessly, healing might look like developing a more conscious relationship with digital tools, perhaps creating tech-free times and spaces, using apps that support rather than undermine mindfulness, or bringing awareness to how different types of media affect your mental state. The consumer culture that surrounds us presents another significant challenge. Buddhist teachings on contentment, simplicity, and the causes of happiness often directly contradict the messages we receive from advertising and social norms about what we need to be happy or successful. As integration deepens, you might find yourself naturally becoming more selective about what you bring into your life, choosing quality over quantity, considering the fuller impacts of purchases, and finding satisfaction in experiences and relationships rather than constant acquisition. Many people discover that creating supportive environments and rituals helps bridge traditional wisdom and modern life. This might include establishing a dedicated meditation space in your home, even if just a corner with a cushion, developing morning or evening routines that include practice, finding local or online communities that share your values, or creating family rituals that incorporate mindfulness in ways that work for different ages and interests. The workplace represents another crucial area for integration. Given how much time most adults spend working, bringing Buddhist principles into professional life can create significant healing. This doesn't necessarily mean meditating at your desk or discussing Buddhism with colleagues, but might involve bringing mindful awareness to tasks, compassionate listening to interactions, ethical consideration to decisions, or perspective to workplace stress and challenges. You might notice yourself responding differently to work pressure, conflicts with colleagues, or organizational politics as your practice deepens. One particularly valuable aspect of this integration involves finding language and frameworks that make Buddhist concepts accessible without diluting their meaning. Many people find that scientific research on mindfulness, secular explanations of Buddhist psychology, or connections to Western philosophical or religious traditions help bridge Eastern wisdom and Western understanding. This translation process doesn't mean watering down the teachings, but finding skillful ways to communicate them within your cultural context. Community support plays an essential role in sustainable integration. While traditional Buddhist cultures offered built-in support for practice through monasteries, temples, and cultural norms, Western practitioners often need to actively create supportive conditions. You might find benefit in connecting with others who share similar values and practices, whether through formal Buddhist groups, meditation circles, mindfulness programs, or simply friendships with others on a similar path. These connections help sustain practice during challenging periods and provide perspectives that might not be available when practicing in isolation. Many people find that the integration process itself becomes a profound practice of mindfulness, creativity, and discernment. Rather than simply following prescribed forms or rejecting tradition entirely, there's an ongoing exploration of how timeless principles manifest in changing conditions. This adaptive approach often leads to discoveries and applications that might not have emerged in more traditional contexts, new ways of practicing in urban environments, approaches to digital mindfulness, or applications in fields like healthcare, education, business, or environmental work. Perhaps most importantly, integrating Buddhist wisdom into Western life helps heal the artificial separation between spiritual practice and everyday life that many people experience. Rather than meditation being something you do for 20 minutes before returning to an unchanged real life, practice gradually permeates all aspects of existence. Cooking dinner, commuting to work, participating in meetings, parenting children, making financial decisions, all become opportunities to embody awareness, compassion, and wisdom rather than separate activities unrelated to spiritual development. This integration creates a sustainable approach to transformation rather than the boom and bust cycles that characterize many spiritual journeys. Instead of intense retreats or practice periods followed by complete immersion in unconscious patterns, there's a steady, consistent embodiment of Buddhist principles that gradually reshapes all aspects of life. This doesn't mean every moment is perfectly mindful or that you never experience difficulties, but there's an overall trajectory of increasing awareness and freedom that continues through changing circumstances. The healing that comes through integrating Buddhist wisdom into Western life isn't about creating perfect external conditions or achieving some idealized state. It's about bringing presence, compassion, and clarity to your actual life as it unfolds, with all its complexities, challenges, and opportunities. This practical approach honors both the profound depth of Buddhist tradition and the unique circumstances of contemporary life, creating a middle path that avoids both rigid traditionalism and superficial modernism. By finding ways to authentically embody these timeless principles within our modern context, we discover that Buddhist wisdom isn't confined to any particular culture, time period, or external form. Its essence, the recognition of our inherent wholeness, the cultivation of compassion and awareness, the understanding of interconnection remains accessible and relevant regardless of outer circumstances. This recognition itself brings profound healing, as we connect with a wisdom tradition that speaks directly to the universal human experience beyond cultural or historical boundaries.